I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship, the season of dreams.
So Juck over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. And welcome into Juck on Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me. I wanted to go live this morning. It didn't work out, so here we are at 5 p.m. Better late than never, I guess. But we are officially live. If you want to pop in the chat, say hello. We got any questions? Save them for the end after I get cooking. I don't usually recognize them as they get rolling. But thanks so much for joining us, guys. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the national champions, in a state of a lot of turnover. Turning over a lot of positions, getting a lot younger on the roster. Is there going to be a big fall off in 2025? Because I'm hearing a whole lot of it. Got to hire a new offensive coordinator. Got to hire a new defensive coordinator. Obviously, an offensive line coach. Is Larry Johnson leaving? A whole lot to talk about. And today I want to go over it. I want to go over the position groups. I want to go over the expected starters this year versus last year. I want to go over some impact freshmen. And I want to hear what you guys think. The schedule as well. But I want to start by saying the Brian Hartline stuff, it's become kind of a lightning rod topic. Should Brian Hartline be hired as the offensive coordinator? And I see a lot of folks who are very excited about it. I see a lot of folks who are calling it a terrible hire if that happens. And they're basing a lot of that off of, this is Ohio State. You shouldn't be cutting your teeth at anything at Ohio State. And I agree with that in the majority of cases. The second part, I'm seeing them bolster their case by saying, we already tried this and it failed in 2022. He was named the offensive coordinator. Never turned out that he called plays because he wasn't ready or he couldn't do it. And if you're someone with that opinion, can I propose maybe an alternative scenario that maybe it wasn't Brian Hartline who wasn't ready? Maybe it was the head coach who told us last year that it was incredibly difficult for him to give up calling plays, how much he loves it. That's why he loves coaching. And what if it was that? What if it was Ryan Day who wasn't quite ready? Or maybe a combination of both. If you want to call it a terrible hire, I mean, that's your prerogative, but we're talking about Brian Hartline here. This is a smart dude. And if he feels he's ready for it and Ryan Day feels he's ready for it enough to promote him to do it, in my opinion, let's roll. I mean, these are two guys who have earned our trust. But there is the whole argument of, would Ryan Day just be doing it to keep him around, just to keep the wide receiver room intact? I imagine that might have something to do with it, but I'll just go back to, if he didn't think he was ready, he wouldn't do it. Would you keep him around just to keep the wide receiver room intact? I mean, it's awfully tempting when you got the best player in college football in your wide receiver room. But if Hartline is the OC, we know JJ's not going anywhere. He's staying here for the next 2 years. And I got to be honest, man, that's the one player in college football that I would consider keeping a coach around, even if I wanted him gone, just to keep JJ in the program. One player in college football, that's it. And I'm not someone who has the logic. Like a lot of people were talking, even when there was the whole, let's fire Ryan Day, there was a lot of counter argument, and that was, you're going to lose the whole roster. And I don't like that. I feel like that the transfer portal goes both ways. They leave, they come, whatever. And I don't think you should ever, if you're an organization that wants to get rid of your coach or a coach, be held hostage by a coach leaving because you're worried about players. You got to do what's best for the program. If that's get rid of the coach, you get rid of the coach. But if getting rid of Brian Hartline meant getting rid of JJ, no thanks. And if you got to promote him, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm thinking about it. But if you have Brian Hartline as your offensive coordinator, receivers are still going to want to come and play in his offense. And now he gets to assist everybody on offense in recruiting, which is a little extra Benny right there. But if I had one pick at offensive coordinator, anybody in the country, I'm picking Will Stein at Oregon. I think that is maybe the only one that I would say is an absolute slam dunk. Can't miss. And if you look at Jim Knowles just getting upwards of $3 million as the number one DC, if you think Will Stein is the number one OC, he's only making he's making $1.4 million if Ryan Day thinks he's the best in the country, if he thinks he's the guy, he'd get him $1 million raise. This is a guy who just made $835 the year prior. That's quite a rapid ascent in the business, and he's a really young dude too. But if they want Heartline, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Ryan Day just went 5 for 5 last cycle, 6 for 6 if you count Bill O'Brien. And hey, he's got my trust. But my gosh, man, the comments this week, the last couple of days, I'm basking in the glow of a national championship. And I feel like if there's ever a time when you are just allowed to take a couple of weeks and not really worry about anything, like in the last decade, I'm not worried about a thing right now. I'm not worried about a thing. Is this 2025 Ohio State Buckeye team going to be as bad as the Michigan team was in 2024? I'm seeing some of that. Going to be a hard drop off. And it's just like, there's nothing that, like, you can take 30 days. It's okay to take 30 flipping days after winning a national championship and not be stressed about anything. So I don't want to hear it during the season. There was a lot of Michigan folk during last season who were saying, I don't care that we suck. We just won a national championship. I certainly won't be saying that, but I'm going to give myself a month before I start stressing out about anything. Ryan Day is evolving as a coach. He's getting better. He got better last season. Here's a perfect example of, like, the CBS article that I talked about yesterday. And if you didn't see that, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but I did a little 10-minute video on it. They talked to Jim Knowles, and Jim Knowles gives them their version, the Knowles version of events here. And my takeaways from the article are, number one, Knowles is really childish for having his camp go talk to CBS and saying that Ryan Day was breathing down his neck and thinking that was somehow going to get him sympathy. Yeah, after that Oregon game, he deserved to have his neck breathed down. But I think the major thing that came out of that to me is Ryan Day has never seemed like a coach who really wants confrontation with his coaches. He wishes everybody would just do their job perfect, and he didn't need to interject. And not all bosses are like that. Some look for opportunities to interject their authority, show you who's the man. That's not Ryan Day's style. And it takes a lot of stones and confidence and ownership as an offensive guy to go in and monitor your defensive coordinator, look over his shoulder, make sure he's doing exactly what you told him to do. And there have been times that I've doubted if Ryan Day was capable of that. You go back, when Knowles was first hired, the situation with Larry Johnson that they talked about in the article, a four-man front, kind of hamstringing Knowles' defense. It looked like a guy, I don't think he would have done that in year 3. We'll put it that way. So he's evolving. And I went through the same thing last offseason, talking about Ryan Day and the changes that he made last offseason from 2022, where he was, Julian Sayin is a good example. Bringing in Julian Sayin on top of Aaron Noland, he wouldn't have done previously. Going after the big dogs in the transfer portal. Now, we weren't really working with the kind of funds before, but bringing in those guys, he was a little hesitant to bring in that type of player, that caliber of guy who would come in and start over somebody. He didn't want to rock the boat. But I feel even more confident after this last year that Ryan Day's evolving even more as a head coach. The way he handled the defense post-Oregon, the defensive staff, the way he was able to keep the team together post-Michigan, and the way they went on that run, I could not possibly feel more confident in Ryan Day right now. Now, maybe they don't win the national championship if he doesn't go and do that on the defense. I don't know. But this is a coach who's getting more and more comfortable in his role as the big dog, taking ownership of a college football behemoth, and he's smashing it. He's checking all the boxes: culture, recruiting, hiring, winning games he's supposed to win, winning matchup games, just won a national championship. What's he need to do? He needs to turn the rivalry around, and he's now got an opportunity to be the first multinational championship winning coach since Woody Hayes at Ohio State. And if he coaches the same length of time that Jim Tressel does, he's got 4 more seasons to try to do that. Next year, he's going to match Urban's whole tenure. Next year will be his 7th season, which is wild to think about. Next year, Ryan Day, if we were looking back, would have been Urban's last year, which is just crazy. But we've just watched him evolve a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm not worried about any of the hires that he needs to make. Again, 6 for 6 last year in my book. and nothing to worry about. But will the team drop off? What do you consider a drop off? The 2024 team was 10-2 in the regular season. Do we think the 2025 team can go 10-2? Do we think they can compete with the other big dogs in college football? How accurately can we assess that without knowing who the offensive and defensive coordinators are? Look, how accurately can we assess it even when we know, right? They could go out and make big splashing hires and we might have a better feel for it, but we're still guessing. Let's just say they go with, for the sake of argument, the internal hires on offense and defense, which I think a lot of people would be mad about if they went that direction on both sides of the ball. But what matters most? What matters most is that they aren't bad hires. They can even be average hires. I don't think Ryan Day is going to make bad hires. But the most important thing, the talent on the team, the culture on the team, and the head coach. Let's talk about this young team. This is a young, hungry team. Is it going to be a playoff team that's capable of beating anybody? Is that realistic to think it's a playoff team? I think so. We've gone over the top competitors. Ohio State's the number one odds-on favorite right now, but you can make an argument, I think, that there's probably five other teams that you could call number one. Texas lost a lot. Oregon lost a lot. Georgia has as many unknowns as Ohio State. Same with Alabama. Ole Miss just reloaded in the transfer portal. LSU did too. Notre Dame, they're breaking in a new quarterback. They lost Xavier Watts. They lost Riley Mills. Penn State is the team that is most consistent year over year right now from what they bring back. And until I see that Penn State team win a game they're not supposed to win, they're never going to scare me. When we look at the win total right now, let's look at the Vegas win totals. Let me pull this up real quick. These are the Las Vegas win totals right now via FanDuel. There are 4 teams with a 10.5 win total. Ohio State didn't even hit that last year. So if you bet the over, you lost. But they got them lumped up there with the best of the best. And I'm hearing a lot of Ohio State fans freaking out about this team falling off a cliff. And I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it. I really don't. Yeah, not ideal to have to replace a bunch of coaches. It's the cost of doing business. We watched Nick Saban replenish his staff over and over and over again. And what mattered most? The head coach, the culture, the process, and the talent. These Ohio State Buckeyes will not look like the 2024 Buckeyes, but nobody else in the country is going to look like the 2024 Buckeyes. And that's what makes me so confident. But this crew in 2025, to me, really has a we got next feel. And keep in mind, these players were on that team. They won a national championship, but this is a new core of players. This isn't like 2014 when your best players won a national championship in 2014 and they were sophomores and then came back their junior year in 2015 as the overwhelming favorites to win the national championship. And they thought they were just going to walk through the season. They were, in a lot of ways, had a feel of looking towards the NFL. They didn't have the same hunger. But this team in 2025, so many of them were a big part of the national championship, which means they're experienced. But the team was led by that class of 2021. The team was led by those seniors, the guys that are going to the NFL now. It was their team. All the stories that were written about were about those guys. This team is hungry, and I love it. Appreciate you guys so much. If you could, please like the video for me. If you're on Twitter, go ahead and retweet it. I'm going to pop in the chat here. My man here, Emmanuel, says they need to get a quarterback out of the portal. I would like to see a veteran quarterback come in as well. The most veteran guy is Lincoln Kienholz, and we're going to go through the position groups. And I agree. I would like to see a veteran quarterback brought in as well. What's up, buddy? The Lunatic Fringe in the house. How we doing, guys? Appreciate you. We got some duck eyes in the house as well. So these years are always so much fun to me when we turn over so many positions and get to see a lot of young guys, get to see a lot of guys that we've watched for years who haven't become starters, maybe pop into that role. And I wanted to go over these position groups before we enter the spring, which we now know is going to be not for another month and a half. They were starting it, previously. They would go for a couple of days and then spring break, and then they'd come back. Now it's all going to be after spring break, which is cool anyway. I couldn't stand when they would do a couple and then we'd have to wait a whole week. But most of these position groups, they're going to be downgrades on paper right now. But we also have to keep in mind when we look at these players, we're looking at them and thinking about them last year. And we need to think about them with a whole another offseason of development, bigger, stronger, more attention to them as starters, more reps with the ones. So when we look at them, we always got to add in, all right, this is going to be a little bit of a better player than we last saw him. And let's start with running backs with Coach Locke, who has been a fantastic coach. Year one, my gosh, that guy was sensational. Obviously, he had two of the best backs in college football in Trey and Quinn. And when I look at the two of those dudes, like Trey is the difference maker. Trey is the guy who can pop it anytime. And you're automatically going to downgrade unless you have another guy like that. And you don't right now. We'll probably see them start the season with C.J. Donaldson, the transfer from West Virginia, and James Peoples. C.J. Donaldson, a big moose of a dude, 6'2", 238. You can't stop him at the goal line. He's got some quicks. He's got some cuts. He's a decent back. He's pretty good. And James Peoples, a lot of varying opinions on him. I think he's a dude. You get him in year two. So they'll probably start with that, but you got the potential impact freshman of Bo Jackson, who is big and physical, 6', 205 right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he's 215 by the time the season starts, but fast. He can take it the distance. Isaiah West, a workhorse, doesn't quite have that breakaway speed, got the acceleration, got the vision, 3 down back. And then you got Anthony Turbo Rogers, who could potentially, break at any time. And he's a little bit smaller, 5'8", but 190, got a thick base. He's not a Michael James. He's not a little frail dude. Like, this dude can take it all the way, but he's built thick. So you got to downgrade in the running back room, but I think it's still a very good room. How about a group with a potential upgrade? At least from the MASH unit that we saw just make the run through the playoffs. Offensive line. Don't know who the coach is. You're replacing Donovan Jackson. You're replacing Josh Fryer at left and right tackle. You bring in Ethan Anyanwa from Rice at left tackle. That's an upgrade from your tackle that just moved out, I think. I think that's an upgrade. Donovan Jackson played great. You had to do a lot to help him. I don't think you win the national championship without him on your team, but I think this can end up being an upgrade. Phillip Daniels at right tackle, or who knows, maybe Ian Moore can contest and win that job. We don't know yet, but I think that might be an upgrade from Josh Fryer. But the biggest upgrade is now you got the guys inside, Luke Montgomery and Carson Hinsman and Tegra Shabola and Austin Siereveld, now with a lot of experience, playoff experience. These guys have played a ton, confidence in another year. Well, they're going to be under a new offensive line coach, but we're talking about dudes with experience now who are going to be bigger and stronger. And I think you upgraded the offensive line. How about a for sure upgrade? Number one, I want to say that Keenan Bailey was damn impressive. This is a coach who, was an internal promotion. And like we talked about with Heartline earlier, I don't like to see people cut their teeth their first time at a new job at Ohio State. But Ryan Day has praised this guy for years. Everybody has, and he thought he was ready. So that tight end room, not incredibly talented, and all they did was get better every single week in an offense that was tight end heavy. But you lose G. Scott and you bring in Max Clare from Purdue. And I saw a list the other day. It was a way too early All-American list from ESPN. And I think Chris Lowe was the article. He's a pretty damn good writer. He's in tune. And he had 3 Ohio State Buckeyes on the first team All-American list, offense and defense. JJ, Caleb Downs, and Max Clare at tight end. The dude's a total stud. And I think just by virtue of bringing him in and Jelani Thurman, another year older, hopefully he can bust onto the scene finally. you've upgraded your tight end room. You keep Will Kazmarek. You got freshman Nate Roberts coming in. Christian Bennett's really good. I think Nate Roberts might get some playing time. A couple other bodies in there, and Max LeBlanc, Brody Lennon, a freshman who I don't think will play this first year. I think he's coming in he's not coming in until June. Nate Roberts is coming in early. But I think those two units, offensive line, tight end, might actually be better. Now, wide receiver, you lose Emeka. Emeka obviously is Emeka, a record-setting wide receiver, a tremendous leader on not just the wide receiver room, but the whole team. But you got second-year JJ. You got third-year Carnell Tate. You got third-year Brandon Inniss. Brandon Inniss, I think, is your leader in this room. I think he's a leader on the team. Mylan Graham bust onto the scene. We're going to see some more Bryson Rodgers. I don't know, man. When I think of JJ in year 2, does that make up for the gap that you lose out on Emeka to Brandon Inniss? It might. It just might. Adding in some Mylan Graham in there, it might be a better room. It really might. Quarterback, a whole lot's going to, I mean, let's be honest. So much of this is going to hinge on the quarterback room. And we're not quite sure who's going to coach him. Offensive coordinator, Billy Fessler. When we look at the dudes in the running here, Julian Sayin is the favorite. Crazy arm talent, crazy release, really smart. Had a quarterback coach since he was in 6th grade. Excellent arm. Athletic, but not too athletic. A little bit on the smaller side at 6'2", 205. Then you got Lincoln, who is a crazy athlete, bigger, strong, 360 windmill dunks, like jumps out of the gym on the basketball court, but can't throw it like Julian. So Lincoln also with an extra year of experience. I don't think this is going to be much of a competition. I think Julian will run away with it. You also bring in freshman Tavian St. Clair. The only scenario that I see Tavian St. Clair playing is if Julian were to start and you were halfway through the season and it was pretty clear that Julian wasn't the dude, or he got injured, and you wanted to go with the future, and that was Tavian if he was showing you that in practice. Other than that, I think this is Julian's team, and it's going to hinge on him. Throwing the football, like if you looked at if you look at Will Howard and you look at Julian Sayin, Will Howard throwing the football was really good. If we were just watching those two in a 7-on-7 setting, it's nothing alike. Julian Sayin considerably more advanced at throwing the football. Special arm. It would be really fun if he can get everything else going and we could see him sling it around. So we'll see. So much is contingent on that. Defensive line. This one's tough. So you're losing 3 high draft picks with Jack, JT, and Tyleek. And then you add in Ty Hamilton, the ultimate team guy, hardworking guy, strong guy. He'll have an NFL career. So you got 4 NFL dudes gone off the defensive line. But you got Kenyatta Jackson. You got Caden Curry. 2 guys in their 4th year, 1 shot to show the NFL what they got. You bring in Logan George to help them from Idaho State. You got CJ Hicks moving down, and he'll help you on the edge in some capacity. How? We don't exactly know yet. And then you got a couple freshmen coming in Ziggy Grady, who physically might be ready, and Episatanale, who I think probably needs a year to put on some weight. But Ziggy Grady might help you. On the inside, you got Caden McDonald, you got Edric Houston, who are just dudes. And I think that Edric Houston is going to end up being a very high draft pick by the time he leaves. Caden McDonald might be too. He is a twitchy big dude like Tyleek. You can't move him. Let's not forget Jason Moore, who coming out of the spring last year, Jason Moore at 6'6", 280. We thought that he was going to be a guy who was going to end up finding himself in the rotation. That didn't happen last year, but he didn't transfer. Hero did. Maybe Jason Moore can take that next step. Maybe Will Smith can. Maybe Tywone Malone, who broke out during the Marshall game and had an awesome game. Maybe he's that guy. Or maybe it's the freshman, Jarquez Carter. I can see this kid getting some serious playing time. He is a little bit on the shorter side, and because of that, undervalued in the recruiting rankings. He's very twitchy. He's incredibly strong. 28 reps at 225 at the Rivals camp. at 17 years old, that would have put him second on the Ohio State team last year, right behind Donovan Jackson at 17. Real deal kid. Also incredibly funny. I did an interview with him here on the show. If you go to my playlists, it's called Next Buck Up, where I interviewed some of the guys in this class. He said when he first came to Columbus, he thought it was going to be mountains and mountain lions. But the defensive line, it's a step back. But it's a step back, and it has crazy high potential, I think. Linebacker, you're replacing my man's Cody Simon. But just like I told everybody at the beginning of last year who was arguing with me that it should be CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles, Cody Simon is the best linebacker on this team. Arvell Reese is going to be amazing. And we've seen it. We've seen the flashes. You lose Cody, so it's going to be a downgrade regardless. But you've got Sonny Styles in year 2 at linebacker, and we saw Sonny improve. He'll continue to improve. And then we get our man Arvell in there. And what sucks is you lose Gabe Powers to Kansas State, because he'd be right up there with these three, moving CJ out of the room. Instead, it'll be Peyton Pierce, who I really like, but I sure wish Gabe Powers was still on this team. That said, Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, that's a couple of dudes right there. That is one intimidating linebacker duo for sure. Safeties, no way around this one. This is a tough downgrade here. You retain, obviously, the best defensive player in college football and Caleb Downs, so you got a big plus with these younger dudes playing next to him. You lose Lathan Ransom. You lose Jordan Hancock at the nickel. Options to replace Lathan Ransom: Malik Hartford, a year older than Jalen McClain. I think Jalen McClain is the dude right now. I think he has some big-time potential. At nickel, replacing Hancock right now, you would say the leader is Lorenzo Styles based on how they played it last year. I was thinking, though, could potentially McClain fit in that role? I'm not crazy about Lorenzo Styles in that role. I hope that he wins it and he's awesome. But if you put McClain down there, maybe Hartford next to Caleb, or potentially impact freshman Fahim Delane get some run. He'll certainly be physically ready to roll. We'll see how that works out. That's one of my most interesting battles to me as to what's going to come out of that safety room. Corner, we're loaded, man. We're loaded. You retain IGB, who I know irritates a lot of people with the penalties, but the dude is going to be a second-round pick, legitimately. You're never going to turn that away. You lose Denzel Burke, and that opens up Jermaine Matthews to start there. Jermaine Matthews is a better cover corner than Denzel. He just is. Then you've got Aaron Scott. You've got Bryce West. You've got freshman Devin Sanchez coming in. Who's going to step up between those three to potentially work their way into the rotation with Jermaine, with IGB? I definitely think one of them will. So a ton of good options at corner. I don't think you take a step back there at all. It's just young. Bottom line is, when we look at last year's defense, you got 11 NFL dudes. You're going to take a step back there. How much? Let's count them. Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden McDonald, Edric Houston, Arvell, Sonny, Jermaine Matthews, Caleb Downs, IGB. That's 9 NFL players, like for sure. And then Jalen McClain, who's at nickel, who knows? Point is, this is a loaded defense. Not as loaded as 2024, but it's a loaded defense. How many other defenses do you think Ohio State's going to play? They got 9 legit NFL dudes walking into spring. We already know that. Not many. Not many. This team also has the 2 best players in college football, and it's not as perfectly well-rounded. Some of the rooms are much better than others, but they're young, hungry players making their mark here. I think this is going to be a really good football team. It's going to be a really good football team, and I am so excited to see the turnover of the leadership. Who's going to pop up and be the new leaders of this crew? I think we're going to see a couple here, and I put them down here. I think We're going to see Brandon Inniss. I think we're going to see Carson Hinsman, Sonny emerging. Sonny and Caleb obviously are going to be your leaders on defense, but they're both kind of quiet leaders. You got to have a big mouth in there too. Who's going to be the big mouth? We're going to see the big mouth leader emerge. On offense, Luke Montgomery's a big mouth. Luke Montgomery, I think he's going to emerge as a big mouth leader. I want to show you guys. So Cole Cubelic does a podcast called Cole Cubelic. He's an ESPN sideline reporter, and he has a podcast called Cube Show, Cube. And he got Seth McLaughlin to do a 45-minute interview with him. And it was no like normal crappy fluff interview. Like they got into some stuff. Seth watching NIL evolve, this team, the national championship team, his transfer. Seth taught him about the Buckeye Grove, which he thought was the really cool tradition. And it is. Seth talking about Jarquez Carter. Seth thought that Columbus was a small town too. But I want to play this segment of this for you. This is what Seth had to say on his decision to leave Alabama and come to Ohio State.
Everybody on the same page. I felt like I'd become stagnant with my development. Not by anything that my coaches did, just because there's a ton of younger guys that need to be developed to get on the field and play. And when you're the guy that always knows what he's doing, there's a lot more coaching on what people are doing at that point than how to do it.
Yeah.
So I just knew I kind of wanted to leave and get more development on myself. And I thought that I could do that if I switched programs and I changed. That definitely culminated. All those thoughts kind of culminated after that Rose Bowl game. I get back in the locker room, I check my phone, and everything's blowing up, kind of placing the whole loss on me. And I see my address get leaked on Twitter.
Jesus.
So it was kind of a surreal moment. I had those conversations I needed to with my position coach and head coach. Talked to Coach Saban. He didn't want me to leave, but he told me he really understood why I'd want to, but he wished I'd come back. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I just got to go and find a new place to grow and become the player who I knew I could be.
And he did. And that's fantastic. Notice the hat he's wearing is his Run the Damn Ball hat that he put together that fundraiser to sell those hats for the Mid-Ohio Food Bank. And I thought maybe he just, they approached him and he was like, yeah, we'll do it. And I'll push it out on my Twitter account. No, he got them printed. He boxed them up in his own house. There were boxes all over his apartment. He went and mailed them himself. He did it all on his own and then handed them over a check. And I said that in the comments, and Cole Cubelic told me he did the same thing at Alabama. The dude is just a grade A human being. And even as I posted that on Twitter, there were some really Alabama fans who were like, yeah, it wasn't his fault, blah, blah, blah. There were some who in this post that just is, him talking about what happened to him, were coming on and trashing him still. Now, I'm not trashing Alabama fans. That's not unique to Alabama fans, that there are a couple of jerks. We know that there are plenty of them in our fan base. We know that Ryan Day and his family went through hell. Really sad when anybody goes through that, especially a 20-year-old player gets doxxed. They're sending out his address. But later on in the podcast, he talked about, Cole kind of asked him basically, where do you consider you're from Alabama or from Ohio State? And he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I got 2 degrees from Alabama. I'm not, nothing's going to take away from my time there. But you just got the feeling that he was very soured on the fan base by the actions of the few that came after him like that. And I think it's a good lesson. I think it's something to take note of, that these guys are paying attention. Fair criticism is fair, but being a total jerk and it's not right. We know it's not right, but it's also ruining like this guy's whole experience at Alabama, like his feeling towards the fan base. It's ruined. It's ruined because of that. And I think back to the Oregon game when Denzel Burke had a really lousy game, made some very obviously bad plays, which will happen when you're a cornerback. He's not the reason we lost that game, defensive game, but there's a whole list, but he was the low hanging fruit. And there was a lot of people coming after him in a very nasty way. And I don't know how you stop it, but I think it's important for those of us who don't agree with that behavior to call it out when we see it. Call it out when we see it, and at least let those guys know that are reading it, that for every one of those idiots, there's 100 more of us who support our players even when they have a bad game. So anyway, that just really irked the hell out of me. But I'm sure you guys saw this Matt Rule stuff. Another thing that irks the hell out of me. Matt Rule, this is him talking about the Nebraska spring game coming up.
Troy Gannon said the other day that April 26th, there will be something here. Are you able to say at this point whether or not there will be any form of scrimmage that day?
Yeah, I don't know that yet, but I'll be honest with you, I highly doubt it. And I think it's really fundamentally, I hate to say it like this, it's really because, last year we're one of the more televised, we were one of the more televised spring games, and I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after that. So to go out and bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market. And so I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys and say, wow, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him. So
Nebraska was the fourth most attended spring game last year behind Ohio State, Alabama, and Penn State. I love the spring game. I think it's a great opportunity to take young kids to the game. I watched probably 6 or 7 of them on TV. Like he says, it was one of the most watched. I don't know if that matters. If I'm working for Ohio State and it's my job to scout everybody else's spring game, like I'm not just stumbling upon it. I'm going out to look for it. I don't think he's actually going to cancel the game, but I think he's trying to call this out and bring more attention to it, which he's a savvy dude, and I like the way he went about it. But it is just so absurd that nobody seems to be able to step up and say, like, look, we've got to start enforcing some of these tampering rules. It's just so obnoxious. And if it leads to losing spring games, like, those are important. There's a lot of people who've never been to Ohio Stadium who go to the spring game, and it's their chance to go just experience the stadium for cheap, for $10. And that just really irks the hell out of me that they won't enforce this. They won't even try to enforce this. And it's kind of tied into a lot of people calling, the NCAA feckless, and they're ineffective, and they're not going to do anything to Michigan. Look, they don't do anything about anything. But in fact, they do pick and choose what they do something about. We look at the COVID dead period, the COVID dead recruiting period, where they slammed Michigan and Arizona State. Like they don't always lose in court. They lose in court when it comes to things that have been ruled unconstitutional. When it comes to player payment or player mobility, they had unconstitutional rules. They get their butt handed to them in court. It seems like when it comes to other things, they tend to be able to get their stuff through. I don't know why tampering is something that they won't try to handle. That they don't seem to try to get a handle on it at all. And it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. Anyway, guys, I'm going to talk to you guys for a few, and then I'm going to get out of here. I smell dinner. I can smell it upstairs. I guess that is what happens when you do the show in the evening, which this is the first time I think I've done the show in the evening. Blue Wolverine gifted 5 Juck on Bucks memberships. Thank you so much, buddy. By the way, guys, this shirt, I'm sure somebody's going to ask me in the comments because it's awesome. GV Art and Design. They're out of Cleveland. It is so sweet. Tri-blend, really comfy. You got to get it. You just got to. I also got a couple different ones I'll wear in the next few days. Let's see. One was from Where I'm From. Now, if you get one from Where I'm From, they run small in the t-shirts They run big in the sweatshirts. But my son bought like 6 of the Nike ones, all different kinds of the Nike ones. And I think they look just generic. I don't like that style. I like styles like that. I like independent shirt makers. And his all look the same. They're just different colors, and all that Nike stuff is junk. But you do got to watch. Emmanuel says, no CJ Hicks. CJ Hicks will be down working in some capacity on the edge. We don't know how exactly, but he certainly won't be at linebacker. And if he was, he'd be buried on the depth chart because it's just not for him. It just is not for him. Billy McBride, one of our Duck Eyes, thinks that Devin Sanchez will be like J.J. Smith, but as a DB. And I've heard this a lot lately. And while I think that Sanchez is going to be an absolute dude, I don't think anybody's going to be like J.J. Smith, to be quite honest. But yes, I do think he's going to be locked down. Absolutely. And I can certainly see him coming in. And look, would you be surprised if midway through the season he supplants IGB as the starter? No, that wouldn't even surprise me. Hummus Hero, this gentleman likes his dip. He says saying size is fine. We just got to keep him safe in the pocket. Will Howard is ridiculously durable. Most quarterbacks don't have that. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I'm telling you, I stood next to saying I was surprised he looks much smaller on TV and in pictures. And I think a lot of it has to do with his baby face, to be honest. I was pleasantly surprised when I was next to him. Buckeye 70 says, I think the team will be great, but I'm genuinely worried about the coordinators. I trust who Day will hire, but I'm still worried, and that's fair. It's fair. However, I think he'll get it right. General Crum thinks Bo Jackson might get some run. Odds are, of those freshmen, he'll be first up. I do know that that Locke really loves Isaiah West too, though. Like I know as Ryan Day loves Bo Jackson. Locke loves Isaiah West. And I love Isaiah West too. Acu Ninja Gal said that was a great interview with Seth, and it was a fantastic interview. And yes, he's a Buckeye through and through now, a Buckeye legend, a tree in the grove, which makes me so happy for him. Eric Biddle says, what's up, guys? How you doing, bud? What's up, Eric? Mika, how you doing, Meek? Glad he's a Buckeye, absolutely. I forget the guy who did the interview, but he didn't seem to love his Buckeye love, but he loves the Buckeye Grove idea. Yeah, that's Cole Kublik. He's went to Auburn. He is very SEC centric. So no, he's got no Buckeye love. Seth McLaughlin, the kind of young man you want your daughter to marry. Absolutely. He's just awesome. He really is. There we go. See, I knew somebody was going to say something about this shirt. Just came today. I'm so happy about it. Phoenix loves this shirt. Thank you, buddy. Gianna just got her tickets to the Texas game. Listen, I'm going down to the Texas game, Gianna, and we're going to try and do some live interviews from down there. We're going to get it all. So make sure to hit me up on the Twitter at Juck on Bucks when that rolls around. Same with all of you. Texas, we're going to do something for Texas, some Juck on Bucks meet up, and we're going to have some fun for that Texas game. That is going to be off the hook. We're talking Arch Manning, and they're going to have all this hype all off season. I think they're eventually going to enter the season number one. So we're going to have number one coming into Columbus, looking for revenge on us, and we're going to beat them down game one. Cannot wait. Lasagna says it's just me, Tim. I don't think it's lasagna. My son's cooking. He's awesome. Oh my gosh, there's my son right there. Look, he just said dinner's ready. In the comments. How cute is that? All right. I appreciate you so much, guys. I will talk to you soon. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll do this again tomorrow night, or we'll see how the schedule goes. But please set your alarm bells. Set those alarm bells so when I go live, you can join me and I can talk to you guys in the comments section. I appreciate you all so much. Please like the video, subscribe if you're not, at Menace to Sports and Juck on Bucks, and I'll talk to you soon. Juck on Bucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck. Who the f- is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks. Juck on Bucks.
Juck. Juck on Bucks.
My guy Juck.
Juck on Bucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks.
Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juck eyes. The Juck eyes.
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.